We would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations as the traditional owners of the land upon which the university stands. We respectfully recognise elders past and present.
Welcome to Newsline, brought to you live from the Media Precinct at RMIT Melbourne.
Hello and welcome to Newsline. I'm Lauren Richardson.
And I'm Joshua Allen. Today on the program, increasing insurance prices are forcing venue closures for Melbourne's live music industry.
And in Brunswick and Coburg, the state government has yet to make its public transport accessible despite being in breach of federal law. Later in the program, we'll have updates across sports and weather too. But first, today's news.
The Australian Defence Force has announced it is opening its ranks to New Zealanders from July in an effort to fill a shortage of about 4,400 personnel. Permanent residents from New Zealand will be invited to join first, with permanent residents from Canada, the United States and United Kingdom to follow from January next year. The ADF currently transfers about 70 Defence Force personnel with partner nations each year. The government hopes these changes will lead to a further 350 transfers annually. Minister for Defence, Richard Marles, says the growth in the size of the Defence Force is essential.
Yoga instructors, martial artists and dog handlers have beaten some construction trades for a spot on Australia's draft priority skills list for migrants. This comes as a surprise to many, as the government faces a shortfall of around 90,000 construction workers to meet its target of 1.2 million new homes by the end of the decade. The Albanese government's Jobs and Skills Australia has released 3 draft lists for occupations to be considered for the core skills migration stream. Those it is confident should be on the list, those it is confident should be off the list, and those requiring more consultation. Early childhood, primary and secondary teachers, electricians, carpenters and civil engineers are included on the confident list, while plumbers, bricklayers and cabinet makers remain under consideration. Build Skills Australia, which was commissioned by Labor to help solve Australia's housing crisis, questioned the decision to include yoga instructors over key tradespeople, with Head of Research Rob Sabira asking if the world really needs more yoga instructors at this point in time.
Senate estimates have heard a speechwriter for Government Services Minister Bill Shorten is being paid $300,000 a year in taxpayer funds. Julianne Stewart is 1 year and 9 months into a 2-year $600,000 deal, despite Services Australia employing over 200 media and communications staff. The information became public after the tender was published on the government's AusTender website. Stewart is making almost double some of the highest paid speechwriters in the agency, which confirmed other senior members were being paid around $140,000 a year. Stewart has previously written for 4 Prime Ministers, including Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard, Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull and former Qantas CEO Alan Joyce. Opposition's Government Services spokesperson Paul Fletcher says the funding was a waste of taxpayer funds amid a cost of living crisis, questioning how a speechwriter can earn more than an MP, saying Labor is more concerned about spin than improving performance. Shorten has denied any involvement in the hiring, saying he is not responsible for negotiating a contract.
An update on the Sydney house explosion on Saturday. A body has been found by rescue crews and identified. Mayor Mole Jasmine was unaccounted for after the Wallen apartment building exploded. Jasmine's mother had been holding out hope she remained alive during the 1.5-day-long search by crews. Newsline understands her body was discovered in the apartment's kitchen beneath the rubble. New South Wales Police have formally confirmed Jasmine's identity and a report will be prepared for the coroner. The explosion is being investigated after neighbours mentioned smelling gas in the days prior to the incident.
Footage of accused murderer Greg Lynn was shown in the ongoing trial for the alleged killing of campers Russell Hill and Carol Clay. The Jetstar pilot's interview with Victoria Police was played to a Supreme Court jury yesterday. During the interview, Lynn demonstrates to police how the men had fought over incriminating images captured by a drone. Hill allegedly grabbed Lynn's hunting shotgun while they argued. The pilot said, "My hand was not on the trigger, it was on the barrel. I told him to let go. He wouldn't. We kept on wrestling, then bang. The gun had discharged, shooting Clay in the head. Lynn says Hill then attacked him with a kitchen knife, distraught over Clay's death. Lynn tells police he pushed me over back onto the ground and the knife went into his chest. The Jetstar pilot says he panicked, causing him to eventually burn the campsite and hide the couple's bodies. Lynn says he was concerned about owning the shotgun, worrying it would result in a guilty verdict. The trial is ongoing. Those are the latest news headlines, and now to today's first story.
Residents in Brunswick and Coburg are campaigning for changes to accessible tram stops as the state government remains in breach of federal law. Reporter Joshua Allen has more.
I'm here at the tram stop on the corner of Brunswick and Sydney roads. To most people, this just looks like your regular old tram stop. However, for some in the community, this stop is the beginning of a very long journey home. The stop is the last accessible tram stop heading north along the 19 tram line for over 6 kilometres. For 19 consecutive stops, users that have any accessibility needs cannot get on or off the tram until the Bakers Road stop in Coburg North. Under federal law, all public transport was to be accessible by the end of 2022. For local resident and disability advocate Martin Leckie, the inability to access public transport makes it difficult to access basic needs like shopping, attending medical appointments, or visiting cafes and restaurants with friends and family.
Yeah, my options are limited to just how far I can go on the wheelchair. It does limit my ability to do those things. So it does affect my quality of life.
In an effort to get the state government moving, the Sydney Road Accessible Tram Stop campaign will be holding its one-year anniversary rally on Saturday the 22nd of June. The campaign have had a petition tabled in Parliament with the support of Greens leader Samantha Ratnam and member for Brunswick Tim Reid.
We got this costed, and getting this done, it's disruptive, it costs a few $1 million, but it's nothing compared to the cost of, say, a level crossing removal project. This actually is about a lot more than wheelchairs. It's about just people with limited mobility, stiff hips, walking frames, obviously people with prams, and of course wheelchairs. The state government have not said publicly when they will make all stops accessible.
And all parties agreed to make everything accessible by the end of 2022. Well, we got to that's passed, but still we don't have access.
For so many, the long journey home still remains. Joshua Allen, RMIT Newsline. In the area of Melton, residents are feeling the strain as the population grows, but bus routes continue to remain neglected. Faith Bujaya reports.
This is Melton, a suburb increasing in population but falling behind in public transport. For several years, there have been ongoing complaints about the insufficient bus routes within Melton, but nothing seems to be getting done.
Melton's just grown so big, so fast, and the bus routes have not changed.
61-year-old Robin Leeds is a resident living in one of the older parts of Melton, still without a local bus route in the area. Living with osteoarthritis in both her hips and spine impacts her ability to walk comfortably to and from the nearest bus stop.
The closest bus stop is nearly 1 kilometre away, and it's just too far for anybody with the condition I have or any similar disabilities to be able to walk there.
Early last year, Robin got in contact with the Melton Council, PTV and even the Public Transport Minister. She was assured of all the plans in place for Melton, but still nothing was mentioned about improving the bus services anytime soon.
Within Melton, there have been 11 new suburbs established in the last 7 years. With Melton being regarded as one of the fastest growing populations, bus routes continue to remain limited.
However, Member for Parliament Steve McGee says his department is having ongoing conversations on how they can address the issue.
We're always tinkering away to try and improve bus services. There's a lot more work to be done, let me tell you.
With this lack of access to a local bus route, families on the other side of Melton are also experiencing a similar issue.
They just neglect this area. They said they cannot pick up people from here.
With no bus route in sight, parents like Maria, who work 5 days a week, are being left with limited options on how to get their kids to school.
I heard some parents need to stop the work just to drop off their kids to school. I cannot afford that. I have bills to pay.
Faith Bajaya reporting for RMIT Newsline.
We're heading to a short break now. We'll be back with a live report with Eden Hayes. Welcome back to Newsline. I'm Lauren Richardson.
And I'm Joshua Allen.
In recent news, Victorian Premier Jacinta Allen announced that State MP Tim Richardson will serve as the Secretary for Men's Behaviour Change. We'll now head into a live interview with Eden Hayes and domestic and family violence professional Abby Newman.
Hey Abby, thank you so much for giving up your time to speak with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So you're a qualified social worker specialising in domestic violence and you also have experience in men's behaviour programs, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, amazing. So in your experience with men's behaviour change programs and facilitating those ones, what are the transformations that you've seen?
Yeah, I think that there's a range of transformations and also understanding what the overall outcomes are. When we think about men's behaviour change, often people think about a stereotype of a certain type of men or male identifying people that are coming into that group, and also a certain type of relationship, usually being that intimate partner violence. And we have a range of different age groups in that room as well. Our aim is to really get the people in that group to understand what are some of those beliefs that are driving that behaviour, what are the ways in which our society is constructed that allows that to happen and maybe feeds into some of those beliefs, what behaviour they're using and the impacts of that behaviour, and some alternatives to that behaviour, because what we're wanting to do is help those people have safe connections. There are a range of people in their worlds that do love and care for them, but unfortunately their behaviour is hurting them along the way. So we want to be able to figure out how to make their relationships safer. So we see anything when we talk about change from a reduction in physical violence, and that may or may not include it's harder to assess the change when there isn't necessarily physical violence. So when we're talking about coercive control or some of the intimidating behaviours that are used, that's a harder thing to measure. But even taking away some insight into behaviours and impacts is a start, because sometimes we're working with people in their 50s who have been using this behaviour for a very, very long time. And sometimes, even as a facilitator, you think, I get to use this behaviour and I get my own way in a relationship and I get listened to in society and I get all of these sort of things. Why change? So we really have to unpack some of those drivers to say, yes, you got all your needs met, you got what you want, you're listened to, but unfortunately it's making a big break in the relationships.
Definitely. And do you think having a secretary for men's behaviour will have an effect on the current state of domestic and family violence?
I think that it's a great start to a really big and complex issue. Hopefully, including some of the other diversities, our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men and women in the way in which they respond. We really need to think about how we include those diversities and different presentations of men, male-identifying people, and their relationship makeup. So it's a great start to bring attention to a really big and complex issue.
What else do you think can be done?
I think that this issue, we're looking at anything from the prevention end and early prevention to the crisis end. So it's really where the focus is going to sit. When we talk about men's behaviour change programs being one of the only sort of interventions that we can use in Victoria with men who have used and or are using family violence. Those programs are significantly underfunded. They struggle to attract and retrain staff, and they often work outside of best practice because of the limited funding. So if we want to think about the crisis end, we start there, and then also expand the options, because that's the only option we have. So for men who don't fit into those groups, who have ABIs, English as second language, and a range of other factors that may disqualify them from a group, there aren't a lot of other alternatives that we can put in place to help support that behaviour change.
Yeah, Definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Abby. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
We'll now take our attention to international news with Natalie Anderson.
Thank you, Lauren. First, in international news, Nigel Farage is back. The BRICS champion is planning to stand for the upcoming UK election. Mr. Farage is planning to return to active politics and may pose a challenge to the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party. He announces he will lead the right-wing Reform Party as a candidate in the upcoming British general election. Mr. Farage's 7 previous attempts in politics have failed. On July 4th, voters across UK will elect representatives to fill all 650 seats in the House of Commons. Next, an update on the Mexico election, and the results are in. The presidential winner is Claudia Sheinbaum. Claudia Sheinbaum will become the first woman president in the country's 200-year history. Sheinbaum is a politician, scientist and academic who has served as head of government or mayor of Mexico City since the last election in 2018 until last year. She won the presidency with between 58.3% and 60.7% of the vote. This is set to be the highest vote tally percentage in Mexico's democratic history. Israel has accepted US President Joe Biden's ceasefire proposal for winding down the Gaza war. Hamas has provisionally welcomed the ceasefire initiative, but states it will free hostages only under a path to permanent end to the war. Although a senior official from the group, Sami Abu Zarai, says the Hamas is too big to be bypassed or sidelined by Biden. And lastly, Toyota admits to safety testing errors in Japan. Toyota is one of the world's biggest automotive manufacturers, and Toyota admits to submitting incorrect safety testing data.
So, Natalie, Toyota is one of the largest car manufacturers in the world. This must come as a shock to Toyota customers. What's the latest on this story?
Certainly, Joshua. Yes, the latest revelations have occurred after Japan's Transport Ministry discovered that the listed auto manufacturers submitted incorrect safety test data. This is just after they applied for certification of some vehicles. The listed brands also include Honda, Mazda and Yamaha too.
So the Toyota chairman, Akio Toyoda, released a statement during a press conference. What exactly did he say?
Akio says the company is sincerely apologetic for this issue, and Toyota has reassured customers that there are no more performance issues that will violate regulations, and customers have also been reassured that there is no need to stop using their cars.
Thank you for your time, Natalie. That's the international news for today.
And now we're going to head to another short break. We'll be back with a cross from Phoebe Billing, who is outside the State Library. Stay with us. Welcome back to Newsline. I'm Lauren Richardson.
And I'm Joshua Allen.
Melbourne's Rising Festival has begun. Reporter Phoebe Billing went earlier to the State's Library of Victoria, where artist Richard Bell has an exhibit.
I'm here at the State Library's exhibit of artist and activist Richard Bell's installation Pay the Rent. The exhibit is a part of Melbourne's Rising Festival, which kicked off on Saturday and is running until June 16. It is a celebration of new art, music and performance across Naarm, Melbourne. The bright red figure behind me is a live calculation of the amount of rent owed to First Nations people by the Australian government since Federation in 1901. The artwork has travelled parts of Europe since its debut in 2022. It was first displayed in Kassel, Germany for Documenta 15, then in the Tate Gallery in London. Now the staggering sum has made its way to Australian audiences for the first time. I spoke to a few passers-by and here's what they had to say about it. So there's an exhibit on right now out the front of the State Library. It's a live calculation of the rent that is owed to Indigenous Australians by the government. What responsibility do you think that we hold to our First Nations people?
Yeah, a big one.
I think we just need to be responsible for what we've done and how we've affected their livelihoods and just help them as much as we can.
I think we hold every responsibility. I think our responsibility, my responsibility as a white migrant, is deep and long-standing.
Like, just taking a guess, how big do you think the number is that is being advertised right now on the front of the library?
7 or 8 figures easily. You know, it's not going to be a small amount.
A couple billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say like a few $100 million.
I think artwork is wonderful because it does it in a very kind of playful way, but it grabs people's attention, which is really beautiful, but makes a point, like it kind of hits a bruise.
For now, the figure will continue to rise. This was Phoebe Billing reporting for RMIT Newsline.
Melbourne's once thriving live music industry has taken a hit, with insurance hikes causing iconic venues to shut down. Reporter Gemma Van Zanen has more.
Melbourne is renowned for its live music scene. Many of our favourite musicians started at local venues across the state. Post-COVID, rising insurance prices have forced closures or price increases on tickets or drinks. The Old Bar in Fitzroy has felt the brunt of insurance demands. A staple in the industry, owner Joel Morrison says the insurance demands on the bar are ridiculous.
Yeah, so I went up from just under $10,000 a year to $60,000 a year. And we've never made a claim. We've been here the Old Bar's been in existence for 22 years. We've had it for about 16, 17 years. And yeah, it just skyrocketed up.
A federal government parliamentary inquiry is looking into the processes of the live music industry and the challenges it's facing. For some businesses, this is too little, too late.
Everything else of people spending less money, people not coming out as much, COVID taking a big hit, the back-end costs have tripled, quadrupled. It's just a perfect storm of crap.
Businesses aren't the only ones feeling the effects. Local musicians around the state are finding it hard to break into an unstable industry.
Ticket demand these days is crazy. For like big level shows, it's really hard to get tickets. But for smaller level shows, it's hard to get people to even come. People are spending like $300-400 on tickets alone, and then however much on merch as well. And people spend all their money towards that, and then don't have enough money to go and see other stuff.
With no regulation on insurance increases in sight, venue owners, old and new, continue to rethink their place in Melbourne's music scene. Gemma Van Zanen, RMIT Newsline.
Op shopping is a charitable way of giving back to the local community, and with the rise of fast fashion, op shops help with keeping recycled fashion alive. Natalie Anderson reports.
Nestled within the heart of the community is a place where wondrous items can be saved and cherished. Opportunity stores have been around for decades. These places allow buyers to get furniture, clothing and miscellaneous items at discounted prices.
My name is Anne Price and I've been working here at the Mustard Tree for about 10.5 years.
I think today with the economic climate, people are coming to op shops a lot more to buy clothing, and here at the Mustard Tree we do a lot for the community.
According to World Metric Statistics, the fast fashion industry is growing 21% each year, and places like local opportunity stores allow sustainable fashion to flourish.
It gives people the opportunity to, who may not have a large income, to buy merchandise at a cheap price.
As you can see, opportunity stores give their volunteers and workers a sense of belonging. And opportunity stores also help keep sustainable fashion alive.
We have a lot of students come in wanting retro clothes and vintage clothes. It's very handy, yes.
Natalie Anderson, RMIT Newsline.
We're heading to a break now. We'll be back with the roundup at 5 p.m.
We would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations as the traditional owners of the land upon which the university stands. We respectfully recognise elders past and present.
Welcome to Newsline, brought to you live from the Media Precinct at RMIT Melbourne.
Welcome back to Newsline with a half hour of news, sport and weather. But first, it's the roundup.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Newsline. I'm Thomas Williamson.
And I'm Tara Clifford.
And this is the roundup. In today's program, we bring you the biggest stories in Australian arts, tech and international politics. On today's agenda, the stoush between US government and the TikTok continues.
We see if artists are taking it too far by performing late, what's happening at Vivid Sydney.
And we take a look at political cartoons of the day.
But before our reporters join us at the desk, a look at how the world's papers are covering the big stories. First off, to New Zealand. The New Zealand Herald reports that Americans, New Zealanders and British people living in Australia could be recruited for the Australian Defence Force in the near future. Non-citizens that are eligible will have the opportunity to apply to the ADF, with the federal government's National Defence Strategy expanding eligibility criteria. From July, New Zealanders who meet the criteria can apply, whilst residents from the UK, US and Canada can begin applying from January next year.
In Costa Rica, Tico Times reports historic election day in Mexico, with Claudia Sheinbaum becoming the country's first female president. Leftist Sheinbaum obtained roughly 60% of the votes, according to the National Electoral Institute. Also in Costa Rica, Guatemalan police have reclaimed a prison which was taken over by 225 members of the Barrio 18 gang.
To Ethiopia and Tanzania, the East African reports that the two countries have signed a deal with South Korea in return for a loan of billions in Tanzanian shillings. The deals will allow South Korea to access Africa's many mineral resources and their extensive export market.
To Europe now, and France 24 reports that Boralex, a Canadian renewable company, is almost finished the completion of its solar farm in the southwest of France in Crouy. The site has been heavily protested by a local activist group who claim that the farm is partially installed in an area classified as a biosphere reserve by UNESCO.
Now to China, Beijing-based newspaper China Daily reports the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology plans to use new policy to support the development of the intelligent vehicle industry. The ministry plans to allocate 100 million 11-digit mobile numbers to encourage communication between vehicles and increase the support for smart cars.
Also in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City has unveiled plans to transform the square in front of its iconic Ben Thanh market with extensive greenery, restored monuments and enhanced public spaces. The plan is estimated to cost 157 billion Vietnamese dong from the city's budget, which is roughly 9 million Australian dollars, and is set to be completed by April next year.
And that's a wrap on today's leading world news. Now to the latest news in technology. The wireless war between the US government and TikTok rages on. Emma, parent company ByteDance, has hired a new global general counsel. What's the story here?
Well, Tara, John Rogovan has been hired as the new global general counsel for ByteDance, and they are actually an ex-Warner Brothers lawyer. ByteDance's former general counsel, Eric Anderson, stepped down in April, and Rogovan has been brought in just weeks after TikTok sued the US government. They were trying to block a law that requires ByteDance to divest its ownership stake in the app or face a ban in the US. ByteDance is saying this is in direct violation of the First Amendment of the US Constitution.
The potential ban of TikTok in the US has received backlash from its users. In May, a group of TikTok influencers filed a suit to block the law that could ban the app. What is the current legal status of this contention, Emma?
Well, Tom, this issue is ongoing. There was a US Congress committee hearing in February where there were concerns that ByteDance were allegedly sharing data of its US users about the Chinese government. TikTok CEO Shou Zi Chew was grilled about this for over 5 hours. Here are the highlights.
Data is stored here in American soil.
Your TikTok employees that live in China, they must cooperate with Chinese intelligence whenever they are called upon. And if they are called upon, they're bound to secrecy. That would include you. So, Mr. Chew, if the CCP tells ByteDance to turn over all data that TikTok has collected inside the US, even within Project Texas, do they have to do so, according to the Chinese law?
Congressman, first, I'm Singaporean.
In April, Biden signed into law the Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act. This action will result in an effective ban or forced sale of TikTok from its parent company.
Thanks, Emma. Next up in tech, Ghana has signed an exclusive deal with the second richest man in Asia, Mukesh Ambani, to secure 5G networking in the country. The Minister for Communications in Ghana spoke last week about the deal.
Ghana is well positioned for 5G implementation due to a robust regulatory framework, existing infrastructure, market demand, and government support. Our proactive approach and commitment to innovation has positioned us as a leader in digital transformation in Africa.
How will this work for Ghana in its developing state?
Well, Tara, this deal is huge for Ghana and even bigger for Ambani. Ambani and his company will be providing infrastructure, applications and smartphones to Ghanaians, which is huge for this country. The deal will also give the NGIC in Ghana exclusive power over the 5G licence for a decade. Ambani introduced the same deal in India in August of 2022 with the same exclusive 5G powers. This was rolled out in October of the same year. However, not all are happy with the deal. In a press release, a member of Parliament, Cassiel Ato-Forson, expressed his disappointment over the deal. He stated there was no formal bidding process and the country could have made up to $500 million out of the $125 that was to be paid over the 10 years. The deal targets for Ghana are ambitious for sure, and they will help to connect 33 million people with the 5G. But these targets are reachable with Ambani's backing for sure.
Emma, thanks for joining us. Now we'll jump into the art world.
Indie pop star Sky Ferreira has been slammed for being late to her show at the Vivid Festival. The singer performed at the iconic Sydney Opera House and ended up an hour and a half late, sparking a divide amongst her fan base, whether it is a part of the act or obnoxious behaviour. Arts reporter Ben Lawson joins us now. Welcome, Ben. Seems artists are starting their shows later than scheduled. Why is this happening?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Tom. And I think artists are trying to maximise their anticipation and excitement. But in the age of social media, people are less patient and vent on platforms such as X. It has been a trend for as long as major concerts have been going around. Think Madonna, The Kid Laroi, Snoop Dogg, all of which have had their fair share of late cancellations or delays. And indie artists seem to have picked up on this trend. Fan bases are niche with these indie artists, and when events like this happen, it can divide the fan bases into stans and hate comments. You only have to think back to 2018 when Mazzy Star also performed at the Sydney Opera House, had people leave for the door early.
There is no denying Vivid has had some amazing events in the last week, the likes of The Face of Change and Dark Spectrum, A New Journey leading the way, along with Afrobeat Dance upcoming on the 9th of June. What can we look out for at Vivid for those attending?
Yeah, they absolutely are great events. And another amazing activity is the techno trains. So these trains are rave trains, and Paul Mack is the visionary musician and train lover who created and composed the event. So he's made 2 train rides available. So first is the scenic route, which is over the bridge and down a secret spur to Lavender Bay. This is the slower of the 2 journeys and is better suited to families with kids aged 5+. There's also the Tech Express, so the techno thrill ride through City Circle in South Sydney. This is more lively, full-body journey for those seeking a more fast-paced and immersive experience.
And to our next story in the arts, we take a look at the global box office and a surprise hit. The global movie leads the ticket sales. It's knocked down Mad Max Furiosa off the top spot, which many people thought would be the big hit of the season. Ben, tell us more.
Yeah, I really think it's a sign of the times. And animation movies are fun, easy to watch, light-hearted, and everyone enjoys just watching them. The same Hollywood actors we've loved watching will be in Garfield with the likes of Chris Pratt and Samuel L. Jackson. And I think it's a growing trend in animation doing well at the box office, and it's increased steadily in recent years. These post-apocalyptic world movies such as Kingdom, Planet of the Apes and Mad Max Furiosa are not doing as well as expected, grossing $24 million in the last 3 days, almost half of that from Garfield. Animation growth is massive, and in 2018 it was worth $250 billion, and now in 2021, $372 billion.
And another movie animation which will hit cinemas soon is Inside Out 2. Following the original movie released 9 years ago, Riley navigates her new emotions as a teenage girl going through puberty. What can we expect, and will the same trend of animation movies dominating the box office follow?
Yeah, so Inside Out 2 releases on June 13th, and there's heaps of hype surrounding the release. It's been 9 years since the original hit the cinemas, and Riley enters her teenage years in puberty, experiencing new emotions of anxiety, envy, embarrassment, and nostalgia. It's a Pixar sequel, and you only have to look to Finding Dory, Incredibles 2, both two films that join the elusive billion-dollar club, and there's no reason Inside Out 2 can't either, with it being poised to reach 80 to 85 million in the opening week. Now, looking ahead, Bad Boys Ride or Die, starring Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, releases June 7th, and Quiet Place Day 1 to release on June 28th.
Some great stuff to watch there, Ben. Thanks for joining us, and now to political satire. Now, for our final segment, let's take a look at today's political satire. I'm reporter Chelsea Szabo, here to discuss a few of the cartoons featured recently in national news. First up, from The Guardian, we follow Ben Jennings with the illustration of Murdoch's new marriage. Chelsea, what can you tell us a bit about this?
Yeah, sure, Tom. The 93-year-old media mogul is on his 5th marriage now, and Jennings has outlined some ideas on the topic. I think it's important to note with this cartoon that it's by The Guardian, a progressive paper, and obviously it's not by any of Murdoch's news outlets, which are traditionally more right-wing on the spectrum. So there's a lot of romantic red. This is, his morning with his new wife, Alina Zhukova, who he married this month on the 1st of June. And Ben Jennings in this really implies who Murdoch wants to be in bed with. You know, he's told his new wife, Alina, he wants the new PM in there once he's elected, so he or she's elected. So really he's in bed with politics and power, and that's his first love, not his new wife. And the UK Conservative Party has actually been in power for 14 years. Murdoch is known for being friendly with the previous PM, Boris Johnson, and even here at home in Australia, our previous PM, Scott Morrison. The current UK PM, Rishi Sunak, has called a general election for the 4th of July, so we'll see whether the Conservative Party can keep its position of power.
That was our first cartoon looking at Murdoch's 5th marriage and his ties to politics in the UK. Now a cartoon on a more solemn topic. Violence against women has been one of the major Australian issues circulating in the media this year. What does this illustration show, Chelsea?
This next cartoon is from an independent news outlet, New Matilda, and it's illustrated by Lindsay Foley. It's quite a simple style of cartoon in contrast with the one we've just seen, and I think Foley's intent here was for it to be simple. So there's just a bare desk, not much going on, the phone's not ringing, and someone who's representing government is in a chair that's red. So it's representing, the blood on the government's hands, and also the bloodshed of the women who have been killed. So this comes off the back of the Albanese government investing over $3.4 billion to support women's safety in the recent budget. But with 42 women killed already this year, a decrease in deaths doesn't seem likely unless there's some significant change.
Thanks for your discussion on that important topic, Chelsea. Next week, we're looking at the two cartoons on the Immigration Minister, Andrew Giles, and his claims that ex-immigration detainees are no longer being surveyed by drones. Tell us about these images.
There seems to be a bit of hubbub about the Giles drone fiasco, Tom, and rightly so. It's an interesting story. The first cartoon depicts Giles with opposition leader Peter Dutton as a drone. Giles has retracted a comment from last Thursday on Sky News that immigration detainees who were released last November are being monitored by drones. So the Age cartoonist Matt Golding, who made this cartoon, highlights that though the drones aren't watching the detainees, Dutton is watching Giles. So now if we look at the second cartoon, we can see how Financial Review cartoonist David Rowe has added his own thoughts on the Giles controversy. It's quite interesting to note how both cartoonists have actually depicted Dutton as a drone, but in this one, it's really interesting to see how the cartoonist has kind of showing the embarrassment for Giles and saying something so publicly and then having to retract it, and also the opulence of his position as the immigration minister, which is shown through his bedroom and all its niceties. So Giles's Labor position seems relatively secure if we go off Albanese's defensive comments, but it will be interesting to see how big of a hit Giles's reputation has got.
Thanks for joining us, Chelsea. That was an excellent insight into some Australian political satire.
And that concludes the roundup for today. Thanks for our reporters, Ben Lawson, Emma Veal and Chelsea Szabo. Coming up after the break, the latest in sport and weather, and a look at how young people are dealing with the cost of living crisis. I'm Thomas Williamson.
And I'm Tara Clifford. Thanks for watching.
The cost of living crisis is sweeping the nation, and out-of-home students are feeling it the most. Despite some relief in the federal budget, some are having to resort to tough decisions. Freddie Moffat reports.
Inflation is on the way down, interest rates remain on hold, and the Treasurer handed down a budget he pledges will tackle the cost of living crisis. All things that should come as a sight for sore eyes for students struggling to support themselves. But until things actually improve, students like Sonia, who moved from Brisbane to Melbourne in 2022 to study, are making tough decisions on how to allocate the limited income from a part-time job.
So if I can survive on that money, like I won't be strictly homeless, but I might not eat. Do you know what I mean?
The average price of a rental in Melbourne has risen 14.6% over the past year, far exceeding the 4.1% growth in wages, meaning the bank accounts of students are feeling the squeeze now more than ever. Despite the dramatic rise, Commonwealth rent assistance is only rising by 10% this September. Austudy and youth allowance similarly haven't risen to meet new cost of living demands, something RMIT researcher Liam Davies flags as an issue.
This is a critical problem, that Austudy and youth allowance simply aren't livable anymore. They were barely livable 15 to 20 years ago. You can't even pay rent and your bills with it, let alone your actual living costs.
For many students in the current cost of living crisis, there's an obvious support network they can turn to, their parents. But unfortunately for some people, that solution isn't as viable as it might seem.
My family could send me money for a flight back where I have a backpack and I would go back and live with them. But they don't have any space.
But for students like Sonia to stay in Melbourne, Dr. Davies thinks that change needs to come from the government.
I think that we need a broad-ranging set of policy and economic reforms that start with the premise that housing should be a home first and an investment class second.
Freddie Moffat, RMIT Newsline.
We'll be back after the break with a look at sport and weather.
It's time for sport. Reporter Dylan Beaumont joins us with the details.
Thanks, Lauren. Australian tennis star Alex de Minaur has continued his dominant form in the French Open overnight with a 4-set win over 5th seed Daniil Medvedev. After conceding the opening set 6-4, de Minaur took the next 3 sets 6-2, 6-1, 6-3 to set up a quarter-final against respected 4th seed Germany's Alexander Zverev tomorrow. Novak Djokovic has set up a quarter-final with Casper Ruud, while in the women's singles, 17-year-old Mira Andreeva from Russia has advanced to her first ever quarter-final, following a straight-set win over fellow Russian Varvara Grecheva. She will play against second-seeded Arina Sabalenka tomorrow. The Matildas Olympic team has been announced after a 2-0 victory over China in an international friendly last night. 18 players were announced, with captain Steph Catley and vice-captains Emily Van Egmond and Ali Carpenter leading the charge. The squad notably excluded Sam Kerr, who is recovering from a torn ACL. The Olympics span over 2 weeks, beginning on the 26th of July. Stadium Australia is preparing to host Game 1 of the State of Origin tomorrow night. The Maroons enter the clash without hindrance, while New South Wales have had to replace Dylan Edwards with James Tedesco due to a quad injury. Tedesco will line up for his 23rd straight Origin match. The Maroons are currently favourites for Game 1, seeking to take out the Origin crown for the 3rd consecutive year. Former NBA superstar Carmelo Anthony has joined the NBL's Next Stars program as a global ambassador, the league announced today. The 10-time NBA All-Star and 3-time Olympic gold medalist will also join the ownership group of a future NBL expansion team. Anthony played 19 seasons in the NBA before retiring last year. To the T20 Cricket World Cup now, South Africa have defeated Sri Lanka by 6 wickets, bowling them out for a total of 77. Fast bowler Anrich Nortje took 4 for 7 in his 4-over spell. The Australian side's campaign will begin on Thursday night against Oman. And Real Madrid have officially announced the signing of superstar Kylian Mbappe. The 25-year-old will earn 57 million AUD a season across 5 years, according to reports in Spain. The Frenchman formally agreed to leave Real Madrid in February, but the transaction was made official this morning. That's all for sport today. Back to Lauren and Joshua in the studio.
To the weather now, where Matthew Eunan has the forecast ahead. What are we expecting, Matthew?
Good evening. It was a rather overcast day in Melbourne today, starting off with a cool 8 degrees in the morning, with temperatures peaking at 13 degrees in the afternoon. Looking ahead to tomorrow across the country, Sydney is expected to reach a top of 18 degrees around 2 o'clock, and it will be even cooler in Canberra, starting with a low of a chilly 4 degrees before reaching a top of 13 in the nation's capital. Down south in Adelaide, it's expected to reach a top of 17 degrees, while in Perth and Brisbane, it'll be nice and sunny, but they'll have to brace for a cool start to the day, before sunshine sets in later in the morning. Perth reaching a top of 22 and Brisbane a top of 21. While up north in Darwin, it's expected to reach a nationwide top of 32 degrees. Looking ahead for the week, Melbourne will be cold tomorrow with a chance of a shower or two with a top of 14 degrees before experiencing some sunshine on Thursday and Friday, with temperatures getting up towards 17 degrees. It will remain cloudy for the weekend, with both days reaching a top of 15 degrees, while Sunday will be cloudy with a chance of rain. Next week looks similar, with winter taking full effect. It'll be a bit overcast on Monday, and get your umbrellas out, as there's a chance of showers on Tuesday, with both days expected to reach a top of 13 degrees. That's all for the week to come. Back to you, Lauren and Joshua.
Thank you, Matthew. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you for joining us on Newsline. I'm Joshua Allen.
And I'm Lauren Richardson. Thank you and have a good night, Melbourne.